pace that you're going to run your marathon at, you're prepared to go right up against the point of failure.
Are you halfway through your marathon training plan and wondering, why is it feeling so hard? Well, you're not alone. I hear like marathon training tips, but only like the week before my marathon race. And I'm like, oh, it's a little too late. I wish I knew that weeks ago. This week on the Runna Podcast, we are bringing you a runner coach check-in.
Am I actually getting fitter, or am I just feeling like things are getting harder?
We're going to be bringing you all our helpful tips and tricks to make marathon training feel not so hard.
Lean into something called habit stacking.
If you're running a spring marathon, this is the perfect mid-training reset.
Setting the context, Anya and I are also within our marathon training blocks as well. Anya, what are you training for? Where are you up to in your training, and how are you feeling?
Yeah, this is why I'm excited for this episode, because I always hear like marathon training tips, but only like the week before my marathon race. And I'm like, oh, it's a little too late. I wish I knew that weeks ago. But I am at like the pointy end of my training for Tokyo Marathon. I'm 3.5 weeks out. And I guess you are at the start of your marathon training block?
Not quite. I've tried to do a slightly longer build this time around. So I'm doing a 19-week plan for London Marathon. And I am in week 8. I'm in my second deload week. And I'm really enjoying it, actually. I'm not at the point where it's all feeling awful. I'm anticipating that it's going to get harder and tougher, but I have also made sure to set up my plan to be mindful of everything that I have going on in my life, make sure I'm building up really nice and gradually. And with that in mind, one of the things I've done, and something that could be really helpful for you guys at home, is thinking about your commitment to your training. And I knew that diving into my plan, running 4 times a week consistently, was a jump from what I was doing through the start of December. So I got through that first build block, felt good, hit that deload week, and then dialed it up to 5 runs a week. And that's what I've now been doing for the last 4 weeks or so, and feeling really good.
Yeah, it's good to hear, because even though you're, Coach Ben, expert, you've done loads of marathons, that is the approach that we'd recommend to any runner, and the same that we would apply to our own training.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's so easy to see people doing more or doing less. And I think it's so important just to look at yourself when you're diving into a new goal, when you're starting a new plan, really just to think about what have you been doing, and make sure that our training is never a big jump up. And that's why we try and encourage people never to do more than like 1 day a week more than they're used to. Otherwise, our body's going to go from 0 to 100, which is not going to give us a chance to adapt to that. And for me, I hadn't been running consistently enough. So 4 runs a week was plenty. And now I'm feeling good with 5. And I think the thing we want to get to, and I think true success in someone's running journey, is at the end, they complete their goal, they cross that finish line happy, and they look forward to getting out the door again. And I think if your training journey feels so tough and exhausting, and you're pushing yourself to do fundamentally more workouts than you're enjoying, it's probably not going to lead to the longest and best long-term success. And so I think always reflect, how are you feeling, both physically and mentally? And we're going to dive into some more tips for them both to make sure that you're enjoying it fundamentally, so that you can cross that finish line of whatever you're training for, and then get back out the door and keep building up, and hopefully becoming a long-term successful runner. And you never know, you'll be running in Anya's footsteps in no time.
No, I couldn't agree more. I did a slightly different build for Tokyo. I am on a 12-week Tokyo marathon plan. 3 and a bit weeks to go. I just did my longest run last week. I've been running 6 days a week. I've really enjoyed having 1 rest day, and that's made it more sustainable. And I'm at that bit where it is feeling mentally hard, and my body is very tired, but I know I've just got to hold on for the next few weeks, and I'll be on that start line before I know it.
And I guess looking at your journey, setting the context, how much mileage have you been running, and what have you started from at the start of your plan, and where are you up to now in these kind of bigger weeks?
Yeah, let's have a look. I've actually done slightly less mileage this block, because I felt like I already had a really good foundation, and I just wanted to be really intentional and not run a whole load of extra mileage that I didn't really need. I wanted quality over quantity. So my peak week was last week, and I did 130 kilometers. But for the past 12 weeks, I've done over 100 kilometers most weeks, with a few deloads. but I'm feeling good. Like as you say, like making it sustainable. I am going to do London marathon as well, but I was planning on doing that as just a fun run. But I'm feeling so motivated. I'm such a good rhythm and I'm loving training. I'm not completely burnt out. And I'm like, I could just carry on training, although I'm not going to do that because it wouldn't be sensible and I will be tired after the marathon. But yeah, I've really, really enjoyed this block.
I guess what you found is that training block's gone so well that the start line's kind of creeping up quicker than you imagined. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a few practical things that you're doing, maybe whether you realize it or not, that people can do at home. And I think one of those is kind of like breaking it down into small chunks. Like having a 12-week long journey, a 19-week long journey, whatever it is that you're doing, can feel really daunting. Mm-hmm. But instead, the way I would think about it is just focus on one build block at a time. Mm-hmm. That's going to be typically 3 or 4 weeks of hard training before you get your next deload. Yeah. And that's not so bad. Yeah. That's 3 long runs maybe, that's going to be maybe 3 speed workouts, or depending on how many times a week you're running, which isn't that bad. And then you kind of come into a deload week. That's a really good opportunity to kind of sense check your body. How are your energy levels, any aches or pains? And then you go into the next one. And before you know it, there's doing 3 build blocks and you're done.
Yeah.
And also we don't need to necessarily think about it being, if you're doing a 12-week journey, this kind of 12-week, 4-month long build, because in reality your peak week is going to be 3, maybe 4 weeks before that of the marathon. Mm-hmm. So for me, while I'm trying to do this really long and ultimately slightly more steady build up for the marathon, I don't need to worry about, or the way I think about it, you don't need to worry about getting there to the 19th week. You need to get there to the 15th week, and then it gets easier from there. And hopefully that allows you then to start to feel fantastic, feel fresh. We can talk about the taper in a minute. And then as a result, ultimately feel great on the start line and get to view it as a victory lap.
Definitely. So at this midpoint in our marathon training block, why does it start to feel hard?
It's a great question. So I think, first of all, it is that cumulative load that we've been increasing and building up over time. And in an ideal world, we're building this up in line or below the rate at which our body can adapt to that. Mm-hmm. So our body is adapting. We are getting fitter, but that's pushing our body. For us to do anything hard in life, of which the marathon is most certainly one, we need to be pushing our body to be able to adapt to that. And that means making the most of our sleep, making the most of all of these different pieces. But it is hard. Your body is changing. Yeah. And that's fundamentally why we also need to have these breaks to let the body adapt to this change.
Yeah. Someone actually messaged me yesterday and they were like, Coach Anya, should I take a deload week? I don't want to take my foot off the gas. And I was like, whoa, let's reframe this. You're not taking the foot off the gas. You're actually refilling up the gas in your car. So you're rejuvenating the engine so you can go further, faster, and for longer, next week. And
yeah, I think that's, it's a great position to be in, that you're approaching your deload week and you're feeling motivated more than anything, which is you're really enjoying that compounding success. You're able to go a little further and you feel okay, but it's all the reason why pause, stop, stay calm. And that will be the biggest thing for you to see that long-term success as well, because yes, you could probably get away with it. And in reality, you shouldn't get to your deload week in a desperate need of a deload, because if that's the case, you're probably overtraining. But if you can get to that point and feel motivated to want to do more, but stay calm, stick to the plan, recover, you're going to then have a much better next build block. And again, you need to be patient. And we often talk about it, but I think there are these 2 different kind of personality types. And for those of you who are doing crazy enough to go and sign up for a marathon and push yourself to want to do your very best at it, not just get round it, but thrive, I think you're the kind of people probably who need to be told to calm down, stick to your deload week, take it easy. And if you're feeling more motivated than ever, use that time to do a bit more mobility, something that you maybe otherwise aren't doing as much. Maybe think about that as an opportunity to sustainably adjust your ongoing training, like I did, and increase your running days by 1 if you're feeling really good. But definitely don't throw those deload weeks out the window.
So with all of that in mind, we're going to break down the challenges that some people might experience so they can keep progressing and enjoying their journey. First thing we'll tackle is the mental challenges. Ben, why might the middle of your marathon training block feel really tough, and what can we do about that?
Yeah, well, I guess kind of the novelties started to wear off once we're many weeks into our training. And so instead, I think we want to try and let the routine that hopefully we've been building start to pay off and hopefully make things a little easier. But one of the practical things that you can do if you're starting to feel doing that you're lacking motivation or you're starting to find these challenges creeping in is lean into something called like habit stacking. First of all, if we think about brushing your teeth, you already do what's called habit stacking. Your routine may be you kind of have dinner, you watch a film, and then you brush your teeth and go to bed. And you don't really think much about brushing your teeth. It doesn't require meaningful mental load. However, if your weeks and your week of training is very kind of unplanned, you don't have this like routine, you get to the Tuesday evening, you get to the Wednesday evening, and you're like, oh, well, I'm only going to go to the gym once a week. I could probably do that another day. As a result, you need to have enough momentum and enough motivation to get up, get off the sofa, take yourself to the gym, go and do this workout, and then come home again. Where instead, what we should try and do, in my opinion, is think through our weeks in general, build a really good routine, and then let's say Tuesday's your day, that you know you can go to the gym on the way home from work, pack your bag on the Monday night so that you've got your gym kit in your bag, you know that you've got a snack so that you can have that on the way to the gym, and then you get to the gym and you've got your clothes. It would almost take effort to go the normal way home and go straight home without the gym. And then you're now at the gym, you've got your clothes and you've had a snack. You may as well do the workout. And that's kind of like this stacking approach, which is that like, it doesn't now require mental load. It would almost take mental load to do the opposite path. And if we can try and do this with our whole week, you'll almost just kind of flow through the training that you've set out for yourself. And I think obviously all of this is kind of set out by making sure that what you are aiming to do is sustainable. But doing that will hopefully reduce this kind of like mental exhaustion that you need to have, particularly when in reality, everyone at home isn't a professional runner where that's the only thing they need to think about. They've got to deal with stresses in family. They've got to deal with the stresses at work. And as a result, it's quite easy to be like, oh, not today.
I guess it's all making it easy for yourself, giving yourself no excuses, because those little things like gym or like the easy run can feel quite hard because it's a lot of effort going in for quite a small rewards. Like you don't really get an immediate feedback after each session. One, because you're like building fatigue, because you're tired. And so it's really hard to prove to yourself that what you're doing is helping you to this long-term goal.
And I would almost argue that it's more frustrating than that, because not only you don't get an immediate reward, but you often get an immediate punishment, which is you could be into the gym and now your legs hurt. And then the next day, your easy run doesn't feel quite as easy. And as a result, then you're thinking, should I go to the gym? Well, now I'll stay on the sofa. Where instead, we know that we should go to the gym. So like using those kind of like little techniques are going to be very helpful.
Yeah.
But I think at the same time, like we said, we want to make sure our training is as sustainable as possible. So we should use moments in our training, not every day and not questioning our training every single day. Otherwise we'll not do anything. But every so often, maybe it's that deload week, and kind of reflect on how you've been getting on. And we should feel good. And if we are feeling exhausted, that could be an opportunity to also review, reflect, and slightly adjust a few things. It might be the case that you are running more days than is sustainable for you, your point in this journey, and all of your other commitments. It might be the case that actually you should dial back from 2 strength sessions to 1 and do some more mobility. And so don't feel like you also need to be so hyper motivated that whatever commitments you made to yourself 19 weeks ago, you need to stick to every day forevermore, and continue to be dynamic and listen to your body. And that's doing the number one piece of advice that any coach could ever give a runner.
Yeah, I think it's those basics of helping it feel a bit easier, just the sleep, the nutrition, stretching, having discipline when motivation steps out. When you mentioned your legs getting more fatigued and, your easy runs feeling harder, I resonate with that so much, because I'm at the point in my marathon plan where often marathon pace feels really hard, and I need to have faith in the plan because I know it will all come together. But right now I'm like, how can I run a marathon at that pace?
Yeah, well, I guess it's 2 things. One of which is that marathon pace is hard. Fundamentally, the pace that you're going to run your marathon at is a pace that you can only do because you've tapered, because you've fueled beautifully, because you're full of adrenaline, and you're prepared to go right up against the point of failure. Like if you want to do your very best marathon, you have to be prepared to take a little bit of a risk and know that there's nothing left. Inherently, therefore, doing that level of difficulty in training is hard because we're not tapered. We may well be doing our long run with some challenging pace within it at the end of a busy week of training, on the back of some strength training or whatever it's going to be. So fundamentally, it's normal for your marathon pace to feel hard. And then also the way that one should structure your plan and your long runs is that it's good to start to introduce the pace that you're going to be running at and start to get familiar with it so that your body can physically adjust to it, but you can also kind of mentally get used to it, think about it from a pacing standpoint. And then over the course of one's plan or their training journey, we'd want to think about increasing the length of time that we spend running at this pace. And obviously that also happens alongside the length of our long runs getting longer. So it's kind of a double whammy approach of things becoming more challenging, which is why it should feel a little bit daunting. Imagine your long run is built up from 24K a few weeks ago to now 28K, and you're going to spend 10K, 12K at your marathon pace. That is daunting. Yeah. But at the same time, it's exactly where you need to be so that in a few weeks' time, a month's time, a few months' time, you're running 42K at that pace.
And having that perspective of knowing where you've come from, looking back at week one of your marathon plan, I think really gives you like faith and trust in yourself. And I think that can really help when it's mentally hard, just like looking back to see how far you've come.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's one of the biggest mental takeaways is that like, it's often easy to not see that progress when you're in it. And sometimes you've got to pause, take a step back and be like, wow, I'm running more mileage than I used to be able to do 10 weeks ago, and be proud of that and know that that is literally going to translate into performance. So moving away from the mental side of training, let's dive into the physical side of things. So kind of, you mentioned that sometimes your easy runs start to feel hard. What would be one of the ways that maybe we can pause, reflect and see, am I actually getting fitter or am I just feeling like things are getting harder?
Yeah, absolutely. Like slower paces absolutely does not mean you're losing fitness. One thing I've spoken about before and I really love is looking at heart rate, especially for those easy runs. It's a really good way to give an indication of if you're building fitness. If you're doing the same easy run as you normally do, the same pace, same elevation, all of that, and your heart rate is a little bit lower, that often can indicate you are fitter, even if it feels harder.
Yeah, and the same is in reverse. Imagine you're going to keep your easy pace feeling just as easy, and therefore your heart rate is feeling or is quantifiably the same, but actually you're finding your easy pace starts to creep up a little bit. That would be a brilliant indication that things are really starting to stack together. And what we will see naturally when you start to zoom out on that time horizon, but don't expect that from one easy run to the next, you're going to see your heart rate drop by 2 beats a minute. That would be unrealistic, but instead, hopefully over the full training journey, that may well be the case. And it could be a really nice boost for you to look back to those easy runs in the first week or so of this marathon block and hopefully give yourself a bit of a pat on the back, and that gives you that confidence that it is all coming together.
Yeah. You mentioned your easy runs feeling harder, but I actually struggle more with my long runs feeling harder. I think it's good to acknowledge that these long runs are getting more demanding, but what can I do to like mitigate just my legs feeling more and more battered?
I guess that's exactly where we can come on to talking about everything we can do to complement the mileage with everything nutrition and then also maximizing recovery. But I think if we focus on nutrition, we want to be making sure that at this point in our training that we're fueling really well. So hopefully, if you're midway through your marathon block, you're getting really comfortable taking on nutrition on the go. But it could be something to think about to try and take on more. So kind of we would typically advise starting out looking at having, let's say, 60 grams of carbs an hour. But people can take on a lot more than that. So if you're starting to find some of those longer runs feeling more challenging, you could experiment increasing the amount of carbs you're taking on and seeing how it sits with you. Does it agree with your stomach? Does it make you feel more energized? But remember, fueling isn't also just what we're doing inside the run. We want to think about making sure that we're going into our workouts as fueled as possible. And then additionally, making sure we're setting ourselves up to recover from those long workouts as best as possible. And from a nutrition side of things, that's making sure when we finish a workout, we're getting in some carbs and we're getting in protein and we're hydrating as well. And then having complete healthy meals all the way throughout the day, the week, and looking sure that within our meals, we're getting everything. That's our carbs, our protein, our fats, and then also plenty of veg, getting all those nutrition vitamins and minerals, etc. And having that complete diet is going to be essential. But one more thing is that in reality, we keep talking about kind of your mileage building up, which in reality is going to mean that your kind of calorific burn is increasing. We should, as we exercise more, fundamentally, for the majority of us, we should be looking to maintain our weight or build our weight as we're strengthening and growing our muscles, which means that as that calorific burn increases, we need to be increasing the amount we're fueling. So if you are finding as well that you're starting to run out of energy or find that you're feeling more and more exhausted throughout your training block, it could be a really important time to reflect and think, have I actually increased the amount I'm fueling my body workout by workout, but also week to week? Because in reality, you may well have done what I've done, which is gone from starting out 4 runs a week that aren't that long to now 5 runs a week, where both I'm running more often and more total mileage. And as a result, I will lose weight by accident if I don't think about fueling well. And that's going to be essential also when we think about avoiding injury.
I'm so pleased you mentioned fueling in terms of like looking at the entire week there, because I think where I've gone wrong and a lot of other people go wrong is we are very good at fueling in the run, maybe before and after the run, but marathon training is so demanding, the whole plan. And so it's really important to make sure you're not just like loading up your glycogen stores before a run. Like it's an entire week thing to help you recover so that you have energy. You don't feel like heavy legged and low and flat going into this training.
On the assumption we're, let's say, running 3 times a week and doing 1 strength session a week, which is probably plenty. I mean, even for someone, let's take it back a bit. For someone who's running a marathon of 2 running days and 1 strength workout, which is probably the lower end of someone's marathon journey, that still means that we're having, on average, a workout every 2 days, which means that you are always recovering from a workout. And you're also always preparing and fueling up for your next workout. So we shouldn't let ourselves think, oh, long run coming, let's eat a bit more, and then back to something else. Instead, we're always looking to build strength, get stronger, and fuel for that ongoing training. And so that should be our lifestyle, and it shouldn't be day by day.
Yeah. And we have some amazing fueling guides on the Runner app, but I wanted to dive into the headlines. First of all, carbohydrates. Pre-run, these are super important. Slow release carbohydrates, like 2 to 4 hours before a hard workout. What are your go-tos?
Well, I've actually stumbled on something new this training block. And for context, everything that Anya and I recommend is unsponsored, and we'll say otherwise. But I've stumbled across chocolate kind of rice bars. Nice. They're a bit like a Squares bar, but they're the Sturka chocolate bars, and they are fantastic. They've got 50 grams of carbs in, and they're also super practical. I often exercise very early in the morning where I can't get up and have a proper breakfast, but I know that I want to be taking on carbs and getting something to have pre-workout. So opening a packet, this rice chocolate bar, 50 grams of carbs, and then coffee, trip to the toilet means that it's not a complete breakfast. It's not ideal, but it's a great way for me to get some good carbs in. And I find it works really well for a day like today where I'm up at 4:30, having that before getting out on the bike at 5:15.
I had a Sturka bar this morning.
Did you really?
Yeah.
We haven't actually
And then I did my 10-mile run, and then I came back for a second breakfast of porridge. Simple carbs like porridge, rice, pasta, they're all great. Flapjacks, banana, trying to avoid too much fiber because that can like increase GI issues, and also making sure you have protein after your workout is too.
I did exactly the same, which is that I didn't have as much breakfast as I would probably like in an ideal world. Finish the run and then onto some overnight oats.
Exactly. Twins. Okay, next one, protein. How soon after a run should I be trying to get my protein in? Because we all know it helps rebuild your muscles.
Yeah, so post-workout, it's great to get some kind of sugar, some carbs in, and some protein. And often why something as simple and enjoyable as chocolate milk is often cited as one of the perfect post-workout sources of fuel. But yeah, looking to get a source of protein in after workout is going to be very helpful. But at the same time, don't panic and just make sure that within the course of every day that you're getting really good source of protein. And fundamentally, each of our meals should have a big or a kind of meaningful source of protein. And that's going to be the most important thing that we can do to give the muscles that chance to recover and build the strength from our cumulative training.
What are you doing inside of your runs to fuel?
Yep. So I am, first of all, making sure that I'm not only fueling in my longest and hardest runs. Typically, as soon as you're running for more than an hour is when we should think about taking on nutrition, which is also going to mean that you're going to have easy runs in your plan where it may well be a good idea to take something on the go. Additionally, there is no right and wrong approach of exactly what fueling you should go for. And the fundamental thing we need to do is experiment. Just because your friend likes something does not mean it's going to be right for you. So use those longer, easy runs and use your long workouts to practice and try out different options so that hopefully at this point in the plan that we're starting to feel really comfortable with our approach. And then once you've settled on an option that's brilliant for you, you just keep reinforcing that same approach so that it feels really normal come race day. And it almost goes back to the point we said before, it just starts to feel automatic. So hopefully at this point you've been doing a bit of experiment. If you haven't, make sure you start so that we can really start to reinforce an approach to on the run fueling before the race day itself. But we're going to segue over to talk a bit more about recovery. So Anya, what are you doing to maximize your recovery around your big training weeks?
So around my runs, I've been trying to take off as much stress as I can, not walking around and doing like 20,000 steps, going on a shopping spree, trying to like sit at my desk, sit on the sofa, fuel well and recover well, because we only really benefit from the training that we recover from. Do you have any helpful tips on how you recover?
Yeah, well, this block I've been really trying to prioritize sleeping more. And actually, I can proudly say I was in bed at about 9:30 on Sunday. And not always possible, but I think really looking to have that like consistent and as regular slot with your sleeping as possible. We want to try and minimize how much we're disturbing that so that you can get good quality, not just quantity of our sleeping. And then attached to the recovery side of things, I'm making sure that I'm doing more mobility work. So far this block, very proudly, I have done at least one mobility session every week. I'm keeping it fresh and varied, doing a few classes at the gym, a few mobility slots at home. And I've also introduced, I haven't done it every day, but I'm trying to do a little 5-minute stretch routine every night before bed. And genuinely, I feel so much fresher the next morning. And sometimes recovery can also be about what feels good for you. And so those little things that you can kind of put into your day, and it goes back to habit stacking. I've kind of built that in as this automatic thing I do before going to bed. And so far, I'm feeling really good for it.
I could definitely learn from that. I need to do a little bit more stretching, a little bit more mobility, but sleep, if I had one superpower, it would be sleep. I have such a great sleep routine. And again, not sponsored. I do have a Whoop, which isn't essential and you don't need it, but I do love tracking my sleep. Obviously, being in tune with my body, I know how it feels, but it's nice to have that little reassurance.
And I can also confirm how much Anya is a sleep demon, having been on long haul flights. She is snoring before the plane's even taken off. And I actually do worry that she might be dead, but anyway, she somehow just does not move the whole way through a flight.
Right. Joe actually recorded me snoring the other day and it's really traumatizing. One last thing, which again isn't a necessity, but a nice thing to do and something I've really been enjoying. I know it's like quite privileged to have this available, but I've been enjoying ice baths and saunas. It's definitely one of those like tiny 1%, but I'm really into contrast therapy at the moment. So jumping into an ice bath, it's really cold and your like blood vessels all constrict, and then when you get into a sauna you start to relax, it's hotter and they expand, and that expanding, constricting like motion flushes blood flow into your legs, helps your muscles recover. And whether it actually helps or not, I feel like it makes me a little bit, I'm doing something hard by getting in that ice bath, and it's again just part of the routine, habit stacking and being in that flow.
And particularly if you're thinking that your marathon is going to land somewhere hot, just getting exposure time in something like a sauna can be a really productive way to better prepare for that eventuality. Although I'm sure for any of us running London, like me, if we think about it being hot, it's going to be miserable and rainy. So no one go and do that. On a serious note, recovery is very much something that is a non-negotiable if you want to have a long-term, successful running journey and successful training block. So one to really take seriously. But to wrap up the episode, Anya, do you have any final top tips to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I think marathon training doesn't have to be hard all the time and a grind. I think finding people around you also training for a marathon or, that can run with you really helps. Running with others is always more fun. And even if in person you can't run with someone, finding a community, whether that's on the Runner app, to help motivate you, to help keep you accountable, I think that makes running more enjoyable.
Yeah, and it doesn't just have to be running with other people. Go to the gym with other people, go and do a bodyweight workout in the park with a friend, go and do a mobility class with other people met before, or even just ring up a friend or your mum on your easy run, or find a friend who's doing their easy run and you can chat to each other. Whatever you can do to make it social, make it easier. My final piece of advice would be something that comes with experience, but to try and learn the difference between fatigue and pain. Because if we can work out when we're tired, we might need a little bit more rest. But when we have a pain, a sharpness, something that doesn't quite feel right, that's when we should very much treat it differently, and specifically go and see a physio. And if you are also struggling on that side of things, do go check out an episode we recorded in November with our runner physio, Adrian. And on that note, we can also very excitingly tell you about a feature that we launched very recently in the Runner app, which is what we call not feeling 100%. So if you are feeling under the weather, you've got the flu, you've got a stomach bug, or if you've been busy at work and you've had to miss some of your training for a while, or if you're starting to feel that your legs are overloaded and you want to take a pause, you can now come into the app, tell us exactly what's gone wrong. We will pause your training or reduce your training depending what you need, and then build you back into your plan safely around whatever got in the way. So it should be a great way to help keep you on track and to keep your training feeling as sustainable as possible. But like I said, if you are struggling with anything, please do go and see an in-person physio and they can help get to the bottom of whatever is getting in your way.
Well, that's all from us. We really hope this has helped, and best of luck for your marathon plan if that's what you're doing, or hopefully this got you a little bit excited if you do want to take on a marathon challenge. Please don't quit at this point. We're all in this together, and this will be the part where you're really proud you stuck it out. The confidence phase comes after this, and you'll be so pleased you stuck at it on race day.
Yeah, and fundamentally, training being hard is going to be what makes racing easier. But otherwise, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Before you go, we've got something very exciting to share. We have launched our limited edition Lululemon Runner collection, Your Best Yet.
It's a 10-piece London capsule built for every runner, for every mile, from those training miles through to race day. Designed for both men and women, it performs both on the run and for long after you've finished.
It's available now in the Lululemon London Regent Street store or online in the US and UK.
It's a limited drop, so when it's gone, it's gone.